You know it's getting real when a Steelers legend decides to speak out. And look, I need to put this on the record right away. In all the years I've been doing this show, and we're going on 5 solid years now through different formats, I've only ever stopped to truly focus an entire episode on something a former Steeler had to say about the current state of the team once. Just once. That moment came back in 2021 when none other than the greatest Steeler of them all, Mean Joe Green, went public with his disgust over that embarrassing 23-0 loss to the Minnesota Vikings in Minneapolis. And let me tell you, he had every reason to be angry. The Steelers got manhandled that day, completely steamrolled by the Vikings' run game. And to make matters worse, that was the same game where Chase Claypool infamously motioned for a first down while the clock was bleeding out. Just a complete disaster, top to bottom. Joe Green didn't hold back, and he shouldn't have. That was a bad day for anyone associated with the Steelers. Whether you were a player, a coach, or just someone who cared about the franchise. Well, today marks only the second time I'm dedicating this much attention to a former player's opinion. And it's not just any former player. It's Terry Bradshaw. Yeah, that Terry Bradshaw. Now, anyone who follows the Steelers closely knows Bradshaw has a habit of speaking his mind. He's always been like that. He talks for a living, and most of the time when he says something about the team, especially in recent years, it doesn't even move the needle. It's usually just background noise. But this time, he said something that actually deserves to be heard and broken down. It deserves context. It deserves real conversation. So here's what happened. Bradshaw was on a radio show in Arkansas, and again, he tends to let loose a bit more when he's not on national TV. And he was asked about the Steelers and their handling of quarterbacks, particularly in light of the team's apparent interest in, or at least connection to, Aaron Rodgers at one point. And what did Bradshaw say? I laughed it off. Literally, he called it a joke. Said, and I quote, "That's a joke. That to me is just a joke. What are you going to do? Bring him in for 1 year? Are you kidding me? That guy needs to stay in California or go somewhere and chew on bark and whisper to the gods out there." End quote. Now look, say what you will about Bradshaw, but you can't say he's not colorful. The man knows how to paint a picture with words, and while the delivery might sound over the top, the core of what he's saying actually makes a lot of sense. The idea of bringing in someone like Rodgers for what's essentially a 1-year rental, especially at this stage of his career, doesn't exactly scream long-term vision. And in Pittsburgh, of all places where the culture has always been about building slowly and developing talent from within, that kind of move feels out of sync. But where Bradshaw really hit a nerve, and I mean in a good way, in a somebody had to say it kind of way, was when he started talking about Kenny Pickett. And let me stop right here and be clear. This isn't about whether you liked Kenny Pickett or not, or whether you thought he deserved a better shot, or whether you were frustrated by his request to be traded the moment the team showed interest in Russell Wilson. No, this is bigger than Pickett himself. Bradshaw pointed to something more fundamental, something that goes beyond just one player's success or failure. He said, in essence, that the Steelers failed Pickett, not the other way around. And I know, that's not a take you hear very often. Most people, fans, media, even some analysts, looked at Kenny's lack of development, the inconsistency, the lack of big plays, and chalked it up to him just not being the guy. But Bradshaw said, no, hold on a minute. Look at what the Steelers gave him to work with. Look at the offensive line. Look at the play calling. Look at the non-existent weaponry. And you know what? He's not wrong. I've sat through every one of those games. I've watched that offensive line crumble against average pass rushes. I've watched the receivers struggle to get separation. I've seen the lack of creativity in the scheme. And we all know how that offense operated under Matt Canada. It was static. It was predictable. It was dull. You don't need to be an X's and O's expert to recognize that what the Steelers put on the field was nowhere near good enough to support a young quarterback, especially one you drafted in the first round and anointed as the future of the franchise. And that's what Bradshaw is getting at here. It's not about propping up Pickett as some can't-miss superstar. It's not about pretending he was on a Hall of Fame trajectory and the team ruined it. It's about process. It's about priorities. You don't spend a first-round pick on a quarterback and then throw him into a situation where he's got no protection, no weapons, and no clear offensive identity. That's how you waste a pick. That's how you waste years. That's how you fall behind in today's NFL. Bradshaw, whether he meant to or not, exposed something that has been bubbling under the surface for a while now. A serious question about how this franchise has been run post-Ben Roethlisberger. Because let's be honest here, for a long time, Ben covered up a lot of problems. He was good enough, experienced enough, and tough enough to make things work, even when the pieces around him weren't ideal. He masked the deficiencies, but he's gone now. And since then, the cracks in the foundation have become visible. The truth is, Mike Tomlin, for all his strengths, and yes, he has many, hasn't shown much when it comes to quarterback development. With Ben, he didn't have to. But now that the burden's on him and his staff to groom a new leader under center, the results have been shaky, to say the least. The process hasn't just been flawed, it's been reactive, inconsistent, and borderline negligent. And Bradshaw, with his old school fire and blunt delivery, put all of that on blast. Let me circle back for a second. Remember, this isn't about whether Kenny Pickett was ever going to be a star. It's about whether the Steelers ever truly gave him the tools to succeed. And if you go down the checklist, offensive line, skill players, coaching, scheme, it's hard to find a box they actually checked. They wanted him to be a franchise quarterback, but they didn't build a franchise environment around him. Now, pivoting back to the Rodgers thing for a moment, Bradshaw made another strong point, not just in mocking the idea of bringing in a short-term fix, but in linking that potential move to the way Pickett's tenure unfolded. Think about it. The Steelers moved heaven and earth to grab a quarterback in the first round. They made it very clear that he was the guy. And then a couple of years later, they're sniffing around 30-something quarterbacks hoping for a miracle season. That's not a plan. That's desperation. You know what that tells me? It tells me they never truly committed. It tells me they didn't believe in their own process. Because if you really believed Kenny was the future, you would have protected him like the investment he was. You would have prioritized his development above all else. And if you didn't believe in him, if you had doubts, then why draft him in the first place? Why not wait for the right quarterback at the right time with the right infrastructure in place? What Bradshaw is saying, without spelling it all out, is that the Steelers have lost their way when it comes to the quarterback position. And he's not the only former quarterback who feels this way. I've spoken to others, guys who wore the black and gold, even if they weren't Hall of Famers like Bradshaw. And not one of them has confidence that this coaching staff knows how to handle the position. Not one. They'll tell you that for all those years with Ben, Tomlin never had to worry about the details. Ben was the offense. Ben called the shots. Ben adjusted at the line, improvised when necessary, took the heat when things went wrong. And now that there's no Ben to rely on, the system, or lack thereof, is being exposed. Quarterbacks are coming in and being expected to survive on instinct alone. That's not a recipe for success in the NFL today. And let me be clear, guys, this isn't just about one bad decision. It's about a pattern. It's about a repeated failure to create a sustainable, quarterback-friendly environment. It's about ignoring the signs, failing to evolve, and making one reactive move after another. And if you're a fan of this team, you should be worried. Not because of what Bradshaw said, but because deep down you know he's right. And that brings us to the current moment. The Steelers, for all their tradition, for all their 6 Lombardis, for all the pride this franchise carries, are standing at a strange and uncertain crossroads when it comes to the most important position on the field. You don't need a Hall of Famer to tell you that what's happened over the last few years doesn't line up with the values that once defined this team. But when someone like Bradshaw says it with that mix of bluntness, sarcasm, and real, emotional investment, it cuts a little deeper. Because he's not an outsider. He's part of the DNA of this franchise. And when he talks, whether you agree with his tone or not, you have to listen to what's underneath it. And here's the part that really matters. This isn't about one failed quarterback experiment or one questionable off-season rumor. This is about how you build a team, how you prepare for the future, how you treat the position that defines your franchise every era. Because the Steelers didn't become great by luck. They had Bradshaw. Then they had years of figuring things out. Then they had Roethlisberger. And now they don't seem to have a plan. And Bradshaw sees that. That's what he's reacting to. Even when you look at how the coaching staff handled Pickett, it's hard not to see the disconnect. The protection wasn't there. The offensive system was outdated, the talent around him was underwhelming, and as soon as the situation got tough, instead of building around the kid and backing him, they pivoted. They gave up. They started looking elsewhere. That's not how you develop a quarterback. That's how you destroy one. And Bradshaw, for all his dramatic flair, laid that truth out on the table for everyone to see. And let's be honest here, this is bigger than just quarterbacks. It's about how the Steelers have been managing key decisions overall. The lack of offensive identity, the stubborn loyalty to schemes that aren't working, the repeated pattern of reactive moves instead of proactive ones. All of that speaks to an organization that's been coasting on reputation instead of execution. And someone like Bradshaw, who bleeds black and gold, is not going to stay quiet about that forever. What's wild is how right he was, even when he didn't necessarily mean to be. Because you can separate the player from the context. You can say, look, maybe Pickett wasn't the answer, and still recognize that the system failed him. You can say, Rodgers is a great quarterback, and still admit that he would have been a terrible fit for where this team is right now. Bradshaw's frustration comes from watching the team he gave everything to flounder with no clear direction. And if you're honest with yourself as a fan, you felt that too. Now, as we move deeper into this offseason and watch how things play out, new players coming in, new playbooks being installed, new energy being sold, there's still that lingering question. What's the plan under center? Who's leading this offense? Not just physically, but structurally. Who's making sure that whoever lines up behind center has the support, the coaching, and the vision to thrive? Because that's what's been missing. Not just talent, not just playmaking, vision, cohesion, identity. Bradshaw might not always say things in the most diplomatic way. He might throw in a few wild metaphors, and he definitely doesn't care if people think he's being harsh. But in this case, his criticisms ring true because they touch on the one thing Steelers fans care about more than anything else: a return to relevance built on the kind of solid football values that once defined this team. And if that means calling out some uncomfortable truths to get there, so be it. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. In a shocking development that has set the NFL world abuzz, Pittsburgh Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin has confirmed whispers circulating around the league about a possible trade involving star linebacker TJ Watt. According to Tomlin, discussions are indeed underway that could see Watt leave the Steel City and don the midnight green of the Philadelphia Eagles. While no official paperwork has yet been filed, the mere confirmation from Tomlin has sent fans and analysts scrambling to make sense of what this could mean for both franchises. For years, TJ Watt has been the cornerstone of the Steelers' defense, a relentless pass rusher whose name is synonymous with disruptive plays and game-changing moments. The three-time Defensive Player of the Year contender has been a fan favorite, embodying the grit and determination that defines Pittsburgh football. However, rumors of internal disagreements and contract negotiations have sparked speculation that Watt's future in Pittsburgh may be less secure than previously thought. The Philadelphia Eagles, on the other hand, have long been seeking to bolster their defensive front and bring in a true game changer to pressure opposing quarterbacks. Adding a player of Watt's caliber would instantly elevate their defense, giving them an edge in the highly competitive NFC East division. Sources suggest the Eagles may be willing to offer a significant package, potentially involving draft picks or promising young talent, to make this blockbuster deal a reality. Though Tomlin's statement stopped short of confirming an official deal, his acknowledgement of the trade talks lends significant credibility to the rumors. Fans of both teams are now left to wonder how this potential move could reshape the landscape of the NFL. Could the Steelers be gearing up to rebuild their defense around new talent? Will Watt's presence in Philadelphia be the missing piece? That pushes the Eagles toward a Super Bowl run? The implications are vast. Pittsburgh's defensive identity has been closely tied to Watt's ferocity and leadership, and losing him will create a void not easily filled. Meanwhile, the Eagles' defense could transform overnight, gaining a player whose impact is felt on every snap. Speculation abounds about how Watt would fit into Philadelphia's defensive schemes and what this might mean for other key players on the roster. As the NFL trade deadline looms, the excitement and uncertainty continue to build. Teams, fans, and analysts alike are watching closely for any further updates that could confirm or deny this major shakeup. One thing is clear, if this trade goes through, it would rank among the most significant and surprising moves of the season, sending ripples across the league and redefining rivalries. For now, the confirmation from Mike Tomlin is enough to fuel intense debate and hopeful anticipation. Will TJ Watt soon be leading the charge for the Eagles, or will the Steelers find a way to keep their defensive star in Pittsburgh? Only time will tell, but the NFL community is undoubtedly on high alert as this potential blockbuster trade unfolds. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.